I'd like to welcome State Representative Chris Valla, who is here this morning, and didn't give us a chance to meet you earlier. We went around to introduce ourselves, so we just told about the business work we also do. So if you want to take just a second to do that.
My name is Chris Valla. I'm proud to represent District 67, and this young man, or this older man to my right, is my dad.
And I believe you came in later. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, myself?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm John Custer. I'm local here.
I'm Carol Cook. I'm a school board member for Pinellas County.
Very good. We're pleased to have you here today, and we're looking forward to our remarks from our guest speaker. The senator was born in Oxford, Mississippi, and he moved to the state of Florida in 1961, where he later attended Stetson University, graduated in 1973, and became CEO of GCI Printing Services, which is based in Largo. He's been serving the state of Florida in the legislature since 1994, and we're pleased to have as our first guest speaker for our first club meeting, Senator Jack Valla.
Thank you very much, Bruce, and I want to commend you for what you're doing, starting a club for business folks. I think a daytime, early morning club, I'm certainly sharper and out in the morning. Sometimes by evening, I'm failing a little bit at my age, you know. But I want to commend you for doing this. Thank you very much. This is another first for me. I've been in Republican politics for 46 years, since I started at Stetson University in the Young Republicans in 1969. Was a charter president of the North Pinellas Republican Club, on the county committee and whatever. And today is the first day I've ever spoken to a Republican club and been filmed and videoed at the same time. And you know, that's something new that has creeped into our party over the last few years, and you know, I'm sure that that's going to certainly stifle the free flow of information from your people that you invite to come and speak, because the idea that anything you say in a group of people goes out on the internet, you know, really makes us all, you know, kind of pull our punches a little bit. And I know why. You know, I just think that's unfortunate that we've started doing that, especially in this club, because. But that's really why I'm here today, is to talk about the direction of our party, the direction of our state. You know, Jim and I have been around long enough to remember what Florida was like when we were in the minority. The rest of you may have been involved in the party when we were in the minority, but for, you know, 100 years or so, the Democrats ran Florida, and we were on the outside looking in. When I first went to work for the Republican Party of Florida in 1975, one of my jobs was to go and recruit members for the state committee. And each county had a committee man and a committee woman, they got together and elected the state chairman of the party, and we had a bunch of counties in North Florida that didn't have a state committee man and a state committee woman. So I went out and I went into the county supervisor of elections office in some of those small counties in North Florida, and there was one county, Dixie County, that had 9 registered Republicans in the whole county when I went to work for the Republican Party of Florida. And it was my job, and I found one of those 9 to be committee man and his wife to be committee woman. So I did my job, but we've come a long way since then. But I think that we've got to also be mindful that the pendulum swings, and if we don't manage the state right once we have gotten in power, then we have, you know, the potential that could change. We had a very close, we've had two very close governor's races in a row. And I, for one, was very concerned last year that the Democrats would take the governor's mansion again. I was very vocal, very active on behalf of our governor to keep that from happening. But I've also said since then that any Democrat, prominent Democrat whose name wasn't Charlie Crist, probably could have won that election, because it wasn't as much about being pro-Republican and pro-Rick Scott as it was being anti-Charlie Crist. And we can't keep winning elections that way. We've got to be stewards of our state. We've got to keep our state moving forward to the extent that you know, people vote Republican for positive reasons, because of what we do. As most of you know, I've been pretty vocal on this matter, and I brought a few statistics today to kind of illustrate my point. You know, in the last presidential election, Obama won by 4 points, 51 to 47 nationally. The groups he carried were men, or the groups that we carried with Romney were men. We got 52% of the vote. Women, white people, we got 59% of the vote. And old people, 65 and up, now that's a couple of years, I am still not there yet. Casey is, but we're 56%. The rest of them we lost. So we carried white people, we carried men, and we carried old people, but the rest of them we lost. And we lost some of those with pretty good margins. African Americans, we got a whopping grand total of 6% of the African Americans in our country voted Republican, voted for our nominee. With Hispanics, we got a whopping 27% voted for our nominee. And on and on. Now that's the first piece of bad news. The second piece of bad news is when you look at not just the percentage of what we get in those groups, but how those groups are growing in terms of their effect on the electorate. Now, for instance, from 2004 to 2012, 8 years, Hispanics in America went from casting 7,500 votes, 77.5 million votes, to over 11 million votes. So that was a 3.5 million vote increase in that 8-year period of time. So we're getting 27% of them, and there's 3.5 million people vote, or 3.5 million more people vote. Blacks were in 2004, were 14 million, and in 2012 were 17.8 million. So when you put those two groups together, that's 8 million more votes in those two election cycles. And we're losing badly with both of those groups. Now, you know, we can continue doing what we've been doing, and we can continue getting the percentage of votes that we're getting, or we can do something different. And that's what I'm all about. And that's what these people with the camera and these people who have taken over our Republican clubs are against me for, is because I'm trying to reach out and be inclusive and bring people into our party rather than being exclusive. And our great model for being inclusive was Ronald Reagan. Now everybody talks nicely about Ronald Reagan. Everybody remembers him as a good president. Everybody remembers him for the leadership that he gave to our party and our country. But a lot of people don't remember he used to be a Union president. A lot of people don't remember he used to be a Democrat. And he believed in a big tent. He wanted people across the spectrum to be involved in the Republican Party, and that's one of the reasons he's one of the most popular, actually in my lifetime, the most popular Republican president that we've had. So I don't apologize. Our Florida Senate has taken the lead on some issues to try to reach out to the population, to reach out to some of the people who are less fortunate than we are. The 2 million people in Florida that don't have health insurance coverage. I've tried to reach out to Hispanics by doing the in-state tuition bill. And let me explain the in-state tuition bill to you. Many years ago, because of the cost of higher education, 65% of the cost of higher education in Florida in our state schools is paid for out of the state general budget, not from tuition. So that means 65% of the cost of our college are paid by the taxpayers. So somebody came up with a great idea that we would give our Florida taxpayers and their kids a break vis-a-vis their tuition with kids from Georgia or Alabama or other states, which is a great idea and I support. Somewhere along the line, that got changed to, or that got modified into, you had to be the child of a citizen in order to get that. Well, the citizens, the non-citizens, whose kids these people are still taxpayers. Because our economy in Florida is a sales tax economy. Everybody pays a sales tax when you buy anything in a store in Florida, and nobody looks at your immigration card when you make that purchase to see if you're legal or if you're not. So Jeb Bush and Rick Scott, and Will Weatherford and Jack Latvala took the lead last year in trying to reach out to these people and give all of the kids whose parents pay taxes in Florida and who graduate from Florida high schools the same tuition in the colleges. Now, some in our party think that's really bad. I agree that we need to stop the illegal immigration, but we got to deal with the people that are here now. We got to deal with these kids, some of whom have lived in this country. I had one young man who came to testify in committee that he was 26 years old. He lived in America for 25 years. He came to America with his parents when he was a year old, not his control, but they had never gotten their citizenship. And so he was in pharmacy school and he was still paying the out-of-state rate. And even though he'd been a citizen of Florida and a graduate, an honor graduate, for 25 years. And I just thought that was wrong. And, so we did something about it. We reached out to him. This year, the big issue, of course, was Medicaid. And a lot of people don't understand, yes, I don't support Obamacare. If I'd have been in Congress when Obamacare was passed, I'd have voted against it. But there were a lot of different facets of Obamacare, where one of the facets was that it provided that if states wanted to expand Medicaid, that the federal government would pay the full cost of it for the first 3 years, and then would pay 90% of the cost of it thereafter. At the same time, the Obamacare bill said that the funds that the federal government currently gives the states to pay for indigent health care in hospitals would be taken away. So right now, under federal law, whether you have insurance or not, and you go to the hospital, to an emergency room, they are mandated by law to take care of you if you don't have the money to pay for it. We have a system in place, or had a system in place, for the feds to help pay for that, so that our Florida taxpayers don't have to pay for it, so that hospitals don't have to eat the cost and then pass the cost on to the other patients in the hospital. And Obamacare did away with that. So what we're faced with in Tallahassee was the choice of, do we give up that money and give up the opportunity to give additional people coverage under Medicaid. The Senate took the position that we should try to replace that federal money with more federal money. Right now, $40 billion a year of our state budget comes from the feds. It's not like that's all only money we get from the feds. All the road money, everything, all this US 19 construction out here, State Road 60, that comes from the federal government. Nobody complains about that. So, you know, it's, you know, we have these buzzwords, we have these political cliches that some in our party want to hammer on, but I'm about helping people, and I'm about making our state a better place to live. And I'm going to be that way as long as I'm in office. And maybe people don't like that, and maybe people want to take me out of office, and if so, that's your privilege to do that. But you know, I believe very sincerely that our Republican Party needs to reach out. We don't need to be pushing people away. We need to be reaching out and pulling them in. I mean, I don't want to be insulting to anybody, but how many white men do we have here, and what percentage of this group that is that? You know, I mean, we've got to we got to wake up about that. And you know, I think if there's one message that I want to leave today, and one message for this club, is to try to take a leadership role in reaching out in the community and getting people who are involved in our community as small business people, who aren't, you know, just club meeting attenders, but who actually make a payroll every day, and who understand what it's all about out there. Like I say, I'm a small businessman, get smaller every day. This year we'll spend 17 out of 52 weeks in Tallahassee. That's 1/3 of the year. Salary didn't go up. The other thing I want to say is that we have never had dysfunction in Tallahassee. We've had dysfunction in Washington. We've had a stalemate, gridlock, things don't get done. One of the reasons I didn't run for Congress when Congressman Young died last year is I had no interest in going up there where they can't get stuff done, because we've always been able to get stuff done in Tallahassee. Well, this year, for the first time, we're having a hard time getting stuff done in Tallahassee. And part of that is because people do not understand the need to work together and to compromise. You know, we have solutions are very rarely found at the end of this spectrum or the end of that spectrum. Solutions are found closer to the middle. They call me transactional because that's what I believe. I believe you've got to find solutions that are in the middle to problems. We're lacking that in Tallahassee this year. And I think that's very unfortunate, and I think people are really tired of it. The congressional district situation, there's anyone that would have told me before we went to Tallahassee for the special session on congressional districts that we wouldn't get a resolution of that, I would have told them they were crazy. Because there weren't really strong feelings on one side or the other about you know, a certain set of maps. No presiding officers wanted to run for Congress. I mean, there's really no reason why we couldn't arrive at a solution, except we had people who said it was their way or the highway. And that's just wrong. And that's going to get us in trouble, and that's going to cost us seats. And, you know, just mark my word, we do not have a guarantee on our control by Republicans of our state of Florida. There's still more registered Democrats in Florida than there are Republicans, still to this day. And then when you put in the independents, independents are almost 1/3 of the electorate. You put them all together. So you got 1/3 independents, 1/3 Republicans, and 1/3 Democrats, a little more than 1/3 Democrats. So we've got to be mindful of that. You know, we've got to reach out to those people who don't think exactly the same way we can't get elected in Pinellas County or statewide only appealing to Republicans. We have to win Democrat votes. We have to win independent votes. And, you know, I take a lot of criticism because I take a leading role, and I'm not ashamed and bashful about saying that. But, you know, just remember I said it when it goes wrong. And it's gonna go wrong in our lifetime in Florida. We will see that. So with that said, how about questions? Anybody got any questions?
I have a question. Since you were talking about the diversity, I have been in PCRC for 3 years, I want to say. I have not really seen an increase. So what is the plan to actually reach out to minorities and get them to buy in to Republican Party? What will be the appeal? Because right now, the public view is that this is a white, male, older party.
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask the party leadership what their plan is. I want to tell you how I think. I think that it's up to those of us that are in elected office to lead by example on issues that are concerned to the broader population out there. You know, I've tried to take a lead with the Hispanic population. It's a very important part of the population in Clearwater, where my district is centered, where my son's district is centered. The Hispanics are very, very important. So I've tried to get involved in issues that concern them, that they're interested in, and I think that's the best way to try to reach them. You know, having a picnic, you know, they'll come, potentially would come and eat our hot dogs and have a great time, but you have to show you care about them.
Yes.
You have to show that you're open to doing things that they think are important. And that tuition thing was one of the, I had a, early on when I, in 2000 and right after 2012 election, when the whole Clearwater came into my district, I looked at my election returns. And I saw that the 2 precincts closest to my home in Clearwater, I lost both of them in the general election. Although I won overwhelmingly, I ran against someone who didn't even come and campaign, didn't even live in the district in the general election, but I lost those precincts. So I looked into it and I found that they're heavily Hispanic precincts. And so I made up my mind to try to reach out to them and let them know that I cared about what they were doing. And I try to go to events with them to be accessible to them in the community. And that was an issue that was important, and that's why I worked on it. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I have a question for you. You know, you keep talking about reaching out to the other side, which is, you know, nice. But the problem is when, you know, we as Republicans, when we do that, if we do not see things their way, we pull back 2 bloody nubs. When we're trying to reach out. Because we have our principles as Republicans, sure, we can come together and we can talk, and yes, we can work this workable solutions, but it's when they wanted us to see everything their way, then how do you deal with that? In terms of, you know, like spending more taxpayers' dollars to solve this problem, that problem? I mean, what do you do when you're reaching out and they're saying, no, we'll see everything our way?
Yeah, there's things that you can do that don't cost any money. You can listen to people, you can talk to people, you know, you can look at, well, you know, let me give you some examples, okay? I'll give you an example. Guns on college campuses, okay? That's a big issue for the NRA and a lot of our Republican leaders and a lot of these Tea Party folks. My God, we gotta have guns on the college campuses. I have polled that issue with Republican primary voters, and there's not even a majority of Republican Party voters that want guns on college campuses. Okay? So, you know, we have these people that want to speak for the party and want to speak about these core issues that they think are important, and they're not. I polled gay adoption with Republican primary voters. Republican primary voters don't care. okay?
For like oil drilling or something.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have a lot of the Tea Party folks and a lot of the party leadership, my colleagues, that think we ought to be drilling for oil 3 miles off these beaches out here, okay? And they're not really mindful of the fact that it's not just an environmental issue, it's an economic issue. And we got 90,000 jobs in this county that depend on our tourism industry on those beaches out there. And who goes to Texas to go to the beach? Who goes to Louisiana to go to the beach? They come to Florida to go to the beach. So, you know, these hot button issues that are advanced by a lot of the activists in our party really are not for the best interest of even the Republicans in our party. We do one more and then I gotta go to the doctor. Yes, sir.
Jack, you've always been a major advocate for my profession as a CPA, and I appreciate that. I believe you co-authored the peer review bill a couple years ago that protected Florida practitioners from outside competition coming in and maybe not be qualified to do work here. So along that vein, what are some of the challenges you see coming up for professional service providers in the next few years?
Not really up to grip on that. I don't know. It seems like I do a CPA bill every year. That's just because your lobbyist is persistent.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Pay them well.
you know, I know that we have more of a tendency and more interest in allowing people from other states to come into Florida to work. I know the lawyers are getting ready to have a seminar over in Tampa that I was reading about yesterday on out-of-state lawyers being able to practice in Florida. And I think that's more and more. For years, Florida was probably one of the most restricted places in America with regard to reciprocity with other states because our professionals in Florida didn't want people retiring down here and then opening, putting out their shingle. And I've traditionally supported that. I traditionally try to support the interests of our Florida businesses, of our small businesses versus somebody that lives somewhere else. People here that elect. You know, we had a big issue this past year with Walmart wanting to be able to sell liquor in their stores. Right now, the law says you got to have a separate liquor store. And there's a lot of in our county, we've got D21 and Pasadena Liquors and whatever. And, you know, Walmart would come in and would probably put a hurting on them and put some of them out of business. So it's my position that I'm going to support the local businesses. Without a doubt, that's one thing I try to be consistent on. At the same time, we've tried to break some barriers down in terms of competition and some of the monopolies that we have that I don't think are justified. And Matt has been involved in another issue that I was really involved in for a couple of years in trying to allow these little craft breweries to grow by allowing them to sell growlers is how the issue started out. And the Budweiser distributors just didn't want them to grow. They liked the lock that they have on the market, and so they did everything they could to get in our way, but we finally prevailed on that. And it's interesting to see all these so-called free market Republicans that want competition and free markets and everything when we start trying to deal with some of those sacred cows, because then the philosophy is not equally applied. So, you know, that's one of the things we run into. But, you know, I've got to go. It's my privilege to represent you in the Senate. Many of you are friends. Many of you have known for a long time. I do believe that we'll have all new Senate districts next year. I do believe that means that for my 8 years in the Senate, I'm going to have to run 4 times. We're supposed to have 4-year terms in the Senate, but I think I'll have 4 2-year terms. So we'll be back on the ballot next year, and you know, there's could be an exciting time. You know, it's but I'm going to be prepared for whatever comes, whether they carry a camera or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, for joining us today and taking time out and thank you particularly for your encouragement to this new club to think differently about including who we include in the club and reaching out to a new group of folks. And those words are very inspiring to us as we begin this new club, which we hope will be a great service to not just the party but the community. So thank you for coming.
Well, good.